After the Crusaders attacked Constantinople and looted it, the Crusaders established a state called the Latin Empire, with this city as its capital, which lasted for half a century. In other territories left by Byzantine, 3 independent governments of Greek origin were formed. After the end of the war, according to the agreement with the Latin Empire, the Venetians controlled 3/8 of Byzantine territory. In 1213, Pope Innocent III called for another war to compensate for the Fourth Crusade. With the death of the Pope in May 1216 AD, his successor, Honorius III, informed the beginning of a new attack to John of Brienne, the King of Jerusalem. Andras II, the King of Hungary, and many rulers and nobles of Europe declared their readiness to participate in this attack, and as a result, the 15,000-strong Crusader army, under the command of Andras VI and Leopold VI, the Duke of Austria, arrived in Acre in the fall of 1217 AD, and in there they were joined by Hugh I, King of Cyprus. Malik al-Adel, the Ayyubid Sultan, the brother of Salah al-Din Ayyubi, who was in Egypt at that time, went to Syria and camped in the Baisan area, but he did not fight the 15,000-strong Crusaders' army in Baisan and retreated to the south of Damascus. With his retreat, the Crusaders marched north and attacked Baisan and captured Banias from there. Then they besieged Banias, and when it was unsuccessful, they returned to Acre. Then they went to Batur Castle, but despite 17 days of siege, they did not succeed in conquering it. At the same time, Hungarian troops, against the advice of the King of Jerusalem and other Crusader commanders, attacked the Bekoe Valley in Lebanon and were narrowly defeated. This event, as well as another unsuccessful attack, caused the King of Hungary to inevitably return to his country in early 1218 AD. In the meantime, the King of Jerusalem thought of asking for help from the Crusader forces, which were going to Levant by order of the Pope to attack Egypt. Like Richard the Lionheart, John of Brienne believed that the key to conquering Jerusalem and all the land of Syria was the conquest of Egypt. Therefore, after obtaining the consent of the commanders of the 2 religious military sects, the Knights Hospitaller and the Knights Templar, and preparing the necessary supplies, he left for the city of Damietta in Egypt on May 7, 1218 AD. The Crusaders, who had realized the importance of capturing the Silsila Tower at the mouth of the Nile River, attacked it, and after suffering heavy losses, they finally captured the tower on August 21, 1218 AD, and the way to enter Egypt was opened for them. After hearing the news of Damietta's fall, Malik al-Adil died of grief, and his son Al-Mu'azzam Isa succeeded him in Syria. At the same time, Al-Kamil Muhammad, the other son of Malik al-Adil and the ruler of Egypt, made effective efforts to prevent the Crusaders from entering Egypt, but when he learned of the conspiracy against him by one of the most influential Ayyubid commanders, he secretly left his camp in Adilia and ran away. As a result of this action of Al-Kamil, his troops dispersed, and the Crusaders were able to capture the Muslim camp. 2 days after this incident, Malik al-Mu'azzam Isa rushed to the aid of his brother and imprisoned and exiled his opponents, and again prepared an army to confront the Crusaders. Because Al-Kamil had previously sent letters to the rulers of the Islamic world for help, many reinforcements arrived in Egypt, as well as many reinforcements arrived in the Crusader camp. Al-Kamil, fearing the fall of Damietta and other Egyptian cities to the Crusaders, offered them Jerusalem and most of the land of Palestine in exchange for the Crusaders' withdrawal from Egypt. Although John of Brienne and his allies accepted the offer, Cardinal Plagio Galvani, the Pope's representative, and some core leaders rejected it. Despite the stubborn resistance of the people of Damietta, the city finally fell on November 5th, 1219 AD, due to the outbreak of disease and famine and the intense pressure of the Crusaders, and the Crusaders looted the city after entering. After the capture of Damietta, there was a fierce dispute between John of Brienne and Cardinal Pelagio over the governance of the city, which ended in favor of Brienne. But soon after, due to the death of his father-in-law, he was forced to return to Acre, and the command of the Crusaders in Egypt came to Pelagio. After the arrival of Louis I, the Duke of Bavaria, at the head of a large army in Damietta, Pelagio decided to attack Cairo in the summer of 1221 AD, and for this purpose, he called John Berrien to help. On the other hand, after occupying Damietta, Al-Kamil moved his camp to the newly built city of Mansoura to prevent the Crusaders from moving towards Cairo. The emirs of the Islamic lands, including Al-Mu'azzam and Malik al-Ashraf, who fully understood the danger of the fall of Cairo, hurried to Egypt at the head of their troops. The Egyptians surrounded them after destroying the dams they had built on the Nile and putting the Crusaders in a narrow path, until the Crusaders asked for peace. John Berrien came to the camp of the Ayyubid army and signed a peace agreement on August 20th, 1221 AD, according to which it was decided that in exchange for the Muslims not attacking the lives of the Crusaders, they would return Damietta to the Muslims and leave Egypt. On September 7th, 1221, the Crusaders handed over the city of Damietta to the Ayyubids and returned to Acre by sea. Thus, the fifth Crusader to capture Jerusalem also failed. 7 years after the Fifth Crusade, which led to the defeat of the Crusaders, Friedrich II, the Holy Roman Emperor, launched a new crusade to recapture the lost territories of the Kingdom of Jerusalem. But this event, in fact, was not a full-scale crusade, but a correspondence between Emperor Friedrich and Sultan Al-Kamil Ayyubi. After these correspondences and the conclusion of a new peace agreement, the city of Jerusalem and some of its surrounding areas were given to Christians for a period of about 15 years, although Muslims were also allowed to easily go to Jerusalem and Al-Aqsa Mosque for pilgrimage. With the arrival of 1239, the peace between Frederick II and the Ayyubids expired, and the Muslims prepared to recapture Jerusalem, because Jerusalem was openly defenseless and easily besieged. However, in the same year, a new crusade was started by order of Pope Gregory IX, in which French and English barons participated. This war, known as the Barons' Crusade, was eventually accompanied by the victory of the Crusaders, in such a way that they managed to regain Jerusalem and the lost lands, and bring their lands to their limits before the Battle of Hattin. After the conquest of the Holy Lands by the Crusaders, Malik al-Saleh united with the Khwarezmians, who were stationed in northern Syria, to compensate for these defeats and recapture Syria and the Holy Lands. Jerusalem, which at this time lacked the necessary defense fortifications against any attack, was besieged by the Khwarezmians in 1244 and was easily conquered. After conquering the city, Christians were massacred, and churches, including the Church of the Holy Sepulchre of Christ, was set on fire, so that Malik al-Saleh was able to return the lands that were conquered by the barons to the Ayyubid territory, so that once again the Kingdom of Jerusalem was limited to a narrow strip of Mediterranean coastal ports centered on Acre. After the Sixth Crusade and the capture of Jerusalem by the Ayyubids, a delegation of several church officials from Jerusalem, Beirut and Antioch left for Europe, Simultaneously with the departure of this delegation, Louis IX, King of France, who was sick at this time, had vowed that if he recovered, he would participate in the crusade. Pope Innocent IV, who was intent on restoring the Holy Land after hearing the report of the religious envoys from the East at the Council of Lyons, inevitably asked the kings and people of Latin to participate in this attack, and the King of France, who had now recovered his health according to his vow, he announced his readiness to participate in this war. After 3 years of effort and preparations, Louis left for Cyprus in June 1248, and after staying in Cyprus for a few months, he moved to the port of Damietta in Egypt. Damietta was the first city that was easily occupied by the Crusaders on June 5, 1249, and Emir Fakhreddin Yusuf Jovini, the commander of the Ayyubid army, was defeated, and the Crusader army entered the city of Damietta 2 days later. Malik al-Saleh offered the Crusaders to exchange Jerusalem for Damietta, which Louis did not accept. For this reason, he moved his camp on June 8, 1249, to the city of Mansoura in the south of Damietta, which was the place of the next encounter towards Cairo. In 1250, the Ayyubid general Fakhr al-Din Yusuf Jovini was killed in one of the Crusaders' attacks, so that the Mamluks under the command of Baybars took over the control of the Ayyubid army. In the battle between the Ayyubids and the Crusaders in Mansoura, the Crusader army suffered many and heavy losses, and the King of France and his 2 brothers were captured by the Ayyubids. After the victory in Mansouri, the Ayyubids intended to continue the war with the Crusaders, but they suddenly got involved in a military coup by the Mamluks, and finally, the Ayyubid government of Egypt was destroyed to be replaced by the Mamluks. Thus, the Mamluks who needed money, instead of receiving money, freed the King of France and recaptured Damietta. After being released from captivity, Louis returned to Acre, and after a 4-year stay in Acre, he returned to Paris due to crises in France. Thus, the 7th Crusade ended in failure for the Crusaders. After the 7th Crusade, the Islamic states were involved in another enemy called the Mongol Empire, led by Hulagu Khan from the east, which was advancing westward after overthrowing the Abbasid Caliphate in Baghdad. But the Mamluks were able to defeat the Mongols, who had not been defeated in Iraq and Syria until then, in the Battle of Ain Jalut, and create the right conditions to establish great power in Egypt and Syria. Between the years 1263 and 1268, Baybars was an attack on the Crusader states of Syria, which were under the protection of the Mongols. He defeated the Knights Hospitaller and Knights Templar and captured Arsuf, Haifa, and some other areas in 1265. In the following year, he attacked the Armenian kingdom of Cilicia and plundered the cities of Tarsus and several other cities. Then, in 1267, he captured Acre, and in 1268, Antioch and Jaffa. In this way, the Principality of Antioch became extinct. At this time, Baybars became aware of Louis's moves to start another crusade. In 1270, Louis IX, ignoring the advice of his advisors, again attacked the Arabs in Tunisia and North Africa. At this time, the Hafsid government was in power in Tunisia. Louis chose the hottest season of the year, and as a result, his troops suffered and perished due to various diseases. Louis himself died, and his attempt to recapture the Holy Land failed. In late 1270, King Edward of England arrived in Acre at the head of a small force of 1,000 crusaders and began the 9th Crusade. Edward asked Ilkhan of Iran led by Abaka Khan, to participate in the war with Mamluks. There, Baibars had to make a peace treaty with Bohemond VI, the ruler of Tripoli. He also signed a peace treaty with Acre on April 22, 1271. This compromise was concluded after Edward failed to forge a Mongol Crusader alliance and returned to England. They were the last group of Crusaders who came from Europe to the eastern lands of the Islamic world. The Crusader states that were founded nearly 2 centuries ago during the First Crusade were destroyed, and only the Kingdom of Cyprus was able to stand for several centuries. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe my channel and follow my Instagram, may.ald.